it reminds me what you're saying of this Barry Sanders razor and like the principle that you're articulating essentially is death by a thousand cuts. So if a player comes to you once and says, like you said with your example, we have qualms about XYZ. If you address nothing, it's like a lack of integrity, it's an opportunity to build trust with someone by hearing them out. And even if you only implement X and you still leave Y and Z the way the coaches think it should be done, or whatever that ends up being, um, there's something for them. So it doesn't end up being a cut. And then if they come back with X, Y, Z, and B, like you said, and you do nothing, that's another cut. And eventually, what happened with Barry Sanders is these small cuts of not listening to, again, Barry Sanders, if you guys don't know, one of the best running backs in the NFL ever. And he was the critical point of the Detroit Lions' success back when he played. So without his best or his best user experience, the Lions were leaving impact on the table. So what happened with Barry Sanders is, hey, keep this offensive lineman. He's my friend. He's critical to our success. He's also really good at his job. And they let the guy walk. And then they let another guy walk that they needed. And that was his buddy. And all these pieces that were one made Barry Sanders happy as your best player, but also like contributed to his success. And therefore, because Barry Sanders was the best player on the team, the asymmetrical impact on the actual Detroit Lions success, the accumulation of just not listening to him negatively compounded so much that the fire to play went away and he retired at his peak because he was sick of it, and it was death by a thousand cuts. So the Barry Sanders razor, I'll kick it back to you. Assume your players are closer to quitting than you think they are. And not necessarily quitting the sport, but like you can't tell me Fiala and Kempe were playing at 100% of who they were if they're a little bit checked out of not wanting to play the system. I'll kick it over to you.
It's interesting because there was a different thing that came to mind at first, and then
Mhm.
your last, the razor, and speaking out loud made me think of something else. So I got two kind of things on this, and they
Sure.
both come from the last week was the coaches convention down in Florida, and there was a presentation on like classic or not classic, but surprising transfer portal, and one of the comments was that around 30% of incoming, so assume that's freshmen, but I guess it could be new, like sophomore, junior transfers or grad transfers, whatever. But 30% of new players don't feel comfortable or like at home when they get there. They feel like they're not wanted, they're not valued. Maybe they feel like other players are considered higher priority than them, so they're getting like the short end of the attention stick, whatever it might be. So this guy's point was like, this guy presenting was like, you kind of need to assume that all your players, when they get there, want to leave because 30% of them do. And it's a little bit nuts to think about. And I certainly think that there are levels to this. And if you are at Denver versus at like an Ivy League school, like you're Denver because like they're national championship contenders, and Ivy League schools because they're premier academic institutions, like it's probably a lower percent than 30, honestly. But regardless, if you had that mindset, as you just said, like assume your players are closer to quitting, assume that there's guys in your team that want to leave and they've only been here 2 months. Um, it's going to force you as a coach, not force you, it's gonna allow you to treat them better and to operate much like you would in recruiting a player that hasn't come here yet, where